She woke up to the sound of her old alarm clock buzzing in the small apartment bedroom that barely held a bed and a dresser and a cracked mirror on the wall. Emma Walsh was a single mother, and every morning felt like a fight between exhaustion and determination. She rubbed her eyes and looked over at her little daughter Lily, who was still asleep curled up with her favorite stuffed rabbit. The sight of her daughter gave her strength. Emma whispered to herself, "Another day, another chance. The kitchen was hardly a kitchen, just a narrow space with an old stove that clicked every time she tried to light it, and a fridge that hummed too loudly. She poured cereal into a chip bowl and placed it on a small wooden table. She smiled when Lily ran, her hair messy, her eyes bright with the innocence only a child could still hold. "Mama, are we going to be okay?" Lily asked. Emma froze for a second, hiding the worry behind a smile. "Of course, sweetheart, we always make it through." She kissed her daughter on the forehead, but inside Emma's chest was tight. The rent notice was pinned on the fridge, a bright red reminder that the payment was due tomorrow, and she had nothing left in her account. Her job at the diner barely covered groceries and bus fares. She'd been behind for 2 months already, and the landlord had warned her one more late payment, and she would be evicted. After Lily went to school, Emma sat at the table with her head in her hands. She thought of the sacrifices she had made, working nights, cleaning offices just to pay for daycare during the day. She thought of her dreams that had been put on hold of becoming a nurse like her mother had been. She thought of the loneliness that crept in at night when she sat by the window, listening to the city outside. She whispered to herself, "I cannot let my little girl lose her home." That afternoon, she rushed to the diner, pulling on her apron. With a forced smile, she served coffee and burgers to businessmen who never looked her in the eyes. She wiped down tables and ignored the ache in her feet. She laughed when customers made jokes she did not find funny. She pocketed tips that barely added up to bus money. She told herself over and over, "I will find a way." When she returned home that night, she saw something strange, an envelope taped to her door. Her heart pounded. She thought it was another notice from the landlord. With shaking hands, she pulled it down and opened it. Inside was a receipt from the property office, stamped paid in full for the next 3 months of rent had been cleared. She blinked in shock, staring at the signature at the bottom. The name was Jackson Wells. She had heard the name before. Everyone in the city had. Jackson Wells was a billionaire businessman known for his empire of tech companies. He was on the news, often photographed at charity galas, driving luxury cars. His name was whispered like he was part legend, part myth. Emma could not understand why would a man like him pay her rent. She dropped into the chair by the door, her hands trembling. She read the paper again and again, as if it might vanish. The next morning, she walked Lily to school, holding her daughter's small hand tightly. "Mama, why are you smiling?" Lily asked. Emma laughed softly. "Because, sweetheart, sometimes good things happen when you least expect them." Still, Emma could not shake the questions from her mind. Was it a mistake? Did someone else mean to pay this to the billionaire? Even though her name, she decided she had to find out. She began searching online, reading everything she could about Jackson Wells. He had grown up in the city too, but in a world far different from hers. He had inherited wealth, but multiplied it through ruthless business moves. He was admired, feared, envied, yet he was also known for quiet act of charity, paying for hospital wings, supporting shelters. Days turned into a week. Emma kept the envelope hidden in a drawer. She went to work and smiled more easily knowing her home was safe for a little while, but curiosity burned inside her. One evening, she decided to walk downtown past a tall glass building where Wells Enterprises had its headquarters. She stood across the street, staring at the logo glowing at the top of the skyscraper. She felt small, insignificant, but then she thought of Lily and the paper that carried his name. She whispered, "I need to know why." The chance came sooner than she imagined. A week later, at the diner, a group of suited men walked, and they carried themselves with confidence, ordering expensive meals and speaking loudly among them. She saw a face she recognized from the news, tall, broad, shouldered with silver at his temples and sharp eyes. It was in Jackson Wells. Her heart raced. She brought coffee to their table, careful not to spill. She kept her head down, but when she glanced up, his eyes met hers for a brief second. Something unreadable passed in his gaze. She hurried away, breathless. When the group left an hour later, she found another envelope under the coffee cup he had used. Inside was a simple note. It said, "Keep going, you are stronger than you think." Emma sat in the back room staring at the note. The handwriting was firm, confident. There was no doubt now. He knew who she was. He had chosen to help her. But why that night? She told Lily nothing. She tucked her daughter into bed and sat by the window staring at the city lights. She whispered to herself, "What do you want from me, Jackson Wells?" The following week, Emma received a call from the property office. They told her another 3 Months of rent had been paid. The signature again was Jackson. Well, she felt a mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude because her daughter would not be homeless. Fear because she did not understand his motives at work. She found herself glancing at the door. Whenever it opened, half hoping, half fearing he would walk in again. Days passed. Then one evening, as she left the diner, she found him waiting outside. His car, sleek and black, gleamed under the streetlights. He stood by it, hands in his pockets. He looked at her and said softly, "Emma Walsh." She froze. "How do you know my name?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I know more than just your name." She did not know whether to run or to stay. Her heart pounded. She finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" He studied her face for a long moment, then said, "Because once someone helped me when I needed it most, and I never forgot." Emma did not know what to say. She whispered, "Thank you, but I cannot repay you." He shook his head. "You owe me nothing. Just promise me one thing. Do not give up." He stepped into his car and drove away, leaving her standing under the streetlight, clutching her bag and trembling from head to toe. That night, she wrote in a notebook, not her diary, but a scrap of paper. Words poured out of her heart, who the next days moved like a dream, but also like a storm. Emma woke each morning with the same thought in her mind. Why was a billionaire helping her? She went through her routine, making breakfast for Lily, walking her to school, tying the little ribbon in her daughter's hair, and pretending everything was normal. Inside, her heart raced every time she thought of his face outside the diner, every time she remembered his words, "Do not give up at the diner." She found herself distracted. She spilled coffee, once dropped a plate. Another time her boss shouted at her, but she barely heard him. She was replaying every moment over and over. The envelope, the note, his voice, saying her name. That night she told her best friend Mia, who lived in the same building. Mia listened wide-eyed as Emma explained about the rent payments and the encounter outside the diner. Mia whispered, "Girl, you realize this man could change your life?" Emma shook her head. "He already has my daughter, still has a home." Mia leaned closer. "Maybe you want more." Emma frowned. "I don't know what he wants, but I know he could have walked past me. He didn't." He stopped. Later that week, another letter arrived. It was short but powerful. It said, "When you are ready, I would like to talk." Emma read it a dozen times. She thought about ignoring it. She thought about tearing up. But the truth was she wanted answers, and she wanted to understand the man who had stepped into her life like fate. The following Friday night, she found herself standing in front of a quiet cafe downtown. She saw him inside, sitting at a corner table, dressed simply, without the aura of cameras or power. She almost turned back, but then she remembered Lily. She took a breath and stepped inside. He looked up and smiled, not the smile of a businessman on television, but something warmer. They talked for an hour. She told him about her struggles, about losing her father, about working 2 jobs to survive. He listened more carefully than anyone ever had. Then he told her his story, how he had grown up with a single mother who worked herself to exhaustion to give him a chance. He said helping her was his way of honoring his mother. When they left the cafe, she felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief because his reasons were clear. Fear because she knew this was only the beginning of something bigger. She walked home to the night, holding her daughter's hand tighter than ever, whispering to herself, maybe miracles do happen. Emma could not sleep. That night, the cafe conversation kept playing in her mind. Every word he said about his mother, about his struggles, about honoring her sacrifices sounded too real to ignore. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to faint on the fridge and the soft breaths of Lily asleep. Beside her, she whispered into the dark, "Why me, why?" Now, the next morning, the city felt different. The streets were the same, cracked sidewalks filled with rushing people, horns, blaring buses, stopping at every corner. But Emma felt as if she carried a secret no one else could see. She walked Lily to school, kissed her on the forehead, and told her to be brave. Then she walked slowly to the diner, her thoughts still tangled with the billionaire who had appeared in her life. At the diner, Mia was waiting for her with 2 cups of cheap coffee and a mischievous smile. "So did you meet him?" Mia asked. Emma sighed and nodded. Mia gasped. "Tell me everything." Emma described the cafe as warmed his words about his mother's promise that she owed him nothing. When she finished, Mia leaned back, whistling softly, sounds like a movie. Emma shook her head. It felt real. The days that followed were calmer. Rent was no longer a weight crushing her chest. She could buy groceries without fear. She even saved a few dollars for Lily's school project. But every time she saw the skyline, the tower of Wells Enterprises gleaming, she felt a pull. She wondered if he thought about her. She wondered if he would appear again. And he did. 1 week later, Emma finished her shift at the diner and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The street was crowded, but she noticed a sleek black car instantly. It was parked quietly at the corner. Jackson stood beside it, talking on his phone. When he saw her, he ended the call and walked over. "Emma Walsh," he said softly. "Good evening." She froze. "Again, why are you here?" He smiled. I was hoping you would join me for a drive. She hesitated. Her heart told her to run, but her curiosity held her still. She nodded slowly. He opened the car door for her. She slipped inside the leather seats, feeling out of place. But strangely safe, they drove in silence for a while, the city lights flashing past the windows. Finally, he said, I wanted to show you something. The car pulled up to a large building lit brightly with the sign Hope Shelter. Jackson explained, I support this place. It helps single mothers and children families like yours. I thought you might like to see where some of the money goes. Emma walked inside and saw women with tired eyes but relieved smiles, children laughing in corners, volunteers serving warm meals. Her heart ached, and lifted all at once. She looked at Jackson and whispered, thank you for doing this. He shook his head. No, thank my mother. She taught me to give back. Emma felt a lump in her throat. She thought of her own mother long gone, and of Lily, who deserved a future brighter than hers. When he drove her home that night, she felt different. She no longer saw him as a distant billionaire. She saw him as a man shaped by struggle and love. She whispered goodnight, and he nodded before driving away. She stood outside her apartment, staring at the old bricks, thinking how strange life could be. Mia, of course, wanted every detail. When Emma told her about the shelter, Mia clapped her hands. He is not just rich, he is human. Maybe he wants to help you more. Emma frowned. I don't know what more means. Mia raised an eyebrow. Maybe a job, maybe a chance, maybe something else. Emma blushed and looked away. The following week, Jackson sent her another note delivered quietly through the diner. It said, would you and Lily like to join me for dinner at my home? Emma's hand shook as she read it. She thought of refusing. She thought of the gap between their worlds. But then she saw Lily playing with her stuffed rabbit and smiling. She wanted her daughter to see something better, something beyond the cracked walls of their apartment. On Saturday evening, she dressed Lily in her best dress, the one she wore on school picture day. Emma put on her plain blue dress, brushed her hair carefully, and together they traveled to the address on the note. When they arrived, their mouths fell open. The house was not just a house. It was a mansion with gardens lit by golden lights. A maid greeted them kindly and led them inside. Jackson waited in the grand hall, but he was dressed simply like the cafe evening. He bent down to greet Lily, offering her a gentle smile. You must be Lily. She giggled shyly, hiding behind her mother. Dinner was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. Plates of food she could hardly name, crystal glasses, silverware that sparkled. Lily's eyes were wide with wonder. Emma felt embarrassed, but Jackson kept the conversation light, asking Lily about school, asking Emma about her dreams he never made them feel small or out of place. He spoke about his business, but only briefly, spending more time asking about their lives. After dinner, he invited Emma to step aside while Lily played with the maid. He looked serious. Now, Emma, I need to tell you something more. She felt her chest tighten. He continued, I think our families may be connected. Emma blinked in confusion. Connected how? He explained slowly that years ago his mother had been close friend with Emma's father, that after a painful falling out they had lost touch, but recently Jackson had found old letters that mentioned her family. He believed there was more to their story than coincidence. Emma felt dizzy. She remembered faint arguments her father had had with someone years ago. She remembered unopened envelopes in a box she had never dared to read. Could it be true? Could this man who had saved her from eviction actually be tied to her bloodline? She whispered, why are you telling me this? He answered, because truth matters and you deserve to know where you come from. That night, Emma walked home, holding Lily's hand tighter than ever. Her mind swirled with questions. She knew the next step would be painful, digging into her father's past, uncovering letters that might change everything. But deep down, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope. That night, Emma could not sleep. The mansion, the dinner, the talk about family history, all circled in her mind. She sat by the window with the old box of her father's things on her lap. She had never opened it fully before, but now she pulled away the tape and lifted the lid. Inside were envelopes yellow with age. She opened one with trembling fingers and read words from her father to a woman named Margaret, the same name Jackson had mentioned his mother. The letter spoke of regret, of anger, of friendship broken. Emma felt her heart pound. This was real. The next day, she met Jackson again at the cafe. She handed him the letters. He read them silently, his face unreadable. Then he looked at her with quiet certainty. I told you our families were tied. He said it not with pride, but with sadness. Emma nodded slowly. She did not know what it meant for future, but she knew the past was no longer hidden. As she walked home holding Lily's hand, she felt the weight of history behind her, but also the lightness of possibility. The billionaire was no longer just a stranger who paid her rent. He was part of a story that had begun long before she was born, a story that was now opening new doors. Emma whispered to Lily, we are not alone anymore, and for the first time in years, she Truly believed it, Emma woke the next morning feeling the weight of everything. She had discovered the letters from her father, the connection to Jackson's family, the strange bond that had formed between them, all of it pressed on her chest like both a burden, and a gift she got Lily ready for school, made her cereal, and tied her hair into 2 braids. Lily smiled up at her mama. "You look happy," Emma hesitated, then smiled back. "Maybe I am, sweetheart." At work in the diner, she found herself daydreaming. She spilled coffee twice, and Mia teased her, saying, "You are lost in billionaire land again, huh?" Emma blushed, but did not deny it. She told me about the mansion, the dinner, the letters. Mia's eyes went wide. "Girl, this is bigger than rent. This is your life changing." Emma shook her head quietly. "It is not that simple. He is kind, yes, but his world is not mine." Mia smirked. Maybe not yet. Later that week, Jackson invited her to visit one of his offices downtown. He said he wanted her to see what he worked for. Emma almost refused, afraid of feeling out of place, but curiosity won. She took Lily with her, and together they entered a shining skyscraper. People in suits stopped to stare as Jackson himself greeted them in the lobby. Lily clung to her mother's hand, but Jackson bent down and offered her a piece of candy with a gentle smile. She giggled and relaxed. He led them through the halls, showing them design labs filled with young engineers coding and testing devices. He explained that much of the profit went to charities and projects like the shelter. They had seen Emma listen carefully, impressed by how deeply he cared for things beyond money. In one office wall hung a large framed photograph of his mother. She looked kind, strong, proud. Jackson paused in front of it, his voice softened. "Everything I am is because of her." Emma felt her heart ache. She thought her own mother, who had passed too soon. She whispered quietly, "My mother would have liked her." Jackson glanced at her and nodded. "I believe so too." That evening, after leaving the skyscraper, Emma tucked Lily into bed and sat with her own notebook. She wrote down everything she had seen, everything she felt. She wrote about the strangeness of walking beside a man the world called powerful, but who spoke to her as if she mattered. She wrote about the fear of what others would say and the hope that maybe, just maybe, this path was leading somewhere she could not yet imagine. The next day brought challenges. Rumors were spreading around the diner. Some customers whispered about Emma's connection to Jackson. A co-worker asked with a sneer, "So, when are you moving into the palace?" Emma bit her lip, but said nothing. She reminded herself of Lily, reminded herself of the truth. The truth was she had been helped not because of gossip, but because of kindness. Still the whispers grew louder. Mia warned her, "People are jealous. They'll try to drag you down." Emma nodded. She knew it was true, and soon the storm broke. One evening as she walked home with Lily, she found another envelope taped to her door. This time it was not from Jackson. It contained a printed article from a gossip magazine. The headline screamed, "Billionaire linked to struggling single mother." Emma's stomach dropped. She felt dizzy. The article twisted everything, painting her as someone using Jackson for money. She tore it up with shaking hands. Lily asked, "Mama, are you okay?" Emma forced a smile. "Yes, baby, everything will be okay." The next morning, she called Jackson in panic. He met her at a quiet park where Lily played on the swings. Emma showed him the shredded pieces of the article. He frowned, anger flashing in his eyes. "I should have expected this. People will try to turn kindness into scandal." Emma whispered, "What do I do?" He looked at her firmly. "You do nothing. Let me handle it." Over the next week, Jackson's lawyers sent letters to the magazine demanding retractions, but the damage was done. People in Emma's neighborhood looked at her differently, some with envy, some with suspicion, some with cruel amusement. She walked with her head high, but inside she was breaking. Only Lily's small hand in hers kept her steady. Jackson noticed. He invited her again, this time not to his mansion or office, but to a quiet cabin outside the city. He said, "You and Lily need peace." She agreed, and one weekend they drove out together. The cabin was surrounded by trees with a lake shining in the distance. For the first time in months, Emma felt calm. She and Lily walked barefoot on the grass, played by the water, laughed without fear at night by the fireplace. Jackson finally spoke of his own scars. He told Emma about the loneliness of wealth, about betrayal from people he thought were friends, about the nights he stared at city lights, wondering if he was just a machine making money. She listened, and for the first time saw not a billionaire, but a man searching for meaning. She told him about her struggles, her nights cleaning offices, her fear of losing Lily to poverty. Their words wove a bridge between their worlds. Emma felt something growing inside her, something more than gratitude, something warmer, stronger. She saw the same in his eyes, but neither dared to name it. Not yet. When they returned to the city, life was waiting. Rumors had not faded. The gossip magazine hinted at more stories. Jackson told her not to worry, but she could see the weight in his shoulders. He was fighting battles not just in business, but in protecting her. One night, Emma opened her door to find a bouquet of flowers on the floor. No, just silence. She knew it was not from Jackson. She felt unease, building someone wanted to scare her. She confided in Jackson, and he tightened security around her building. He told her, "I will not let anyone harm you," she wanted to believe him. But fear lingered. Meanwhile, Lily grew closer to him. She drew pictures of their small family and included him in them when Emma asked why. Lily said, "Because he makes you smile, Mama." Emma hugged her daughter, tightly hiding tears. The story of Emma and Jackson was no longer just about Rennet. Was about trust, about finding light in the shadows, about two worlds colliding and creating something unexpected. But the storm was only beginning. That night, Emma sat by the window of her apartment, staring out at the city lights. The bouquet still rested on the table, its bright petals a reminder that someone somewhere was watching. She felt both protected by Jackson and exposed by the whispers of the world. She opened her notebook and wrote, "I never asked for this. I never wanted fame or rumors. I only wanted safety for my daughter, but maybe this is bigger than me." The next morning, she walked Lily to school and saw her parents whispering as she passed. She held her head high, but inside, she burned with shame. When she met Jackson later at the cafe, she finally let the words spill. "I cannot live like this, Jackson. I am grateful for everything, but the gossip, the threats, the looks, I feel like I am losing myself." He listened quietly, then leaned forward. His voice was low but steady. "You are not alone, Emma. I started this by helping with your rent, but now it is more than charity. You matter to me, and I will not let them break you." Emma felt her chest tighten. She had feared those words, yet longed for them at the same time. She whispered, "Then promise me one thing. Promise me you will tell me the whole truth about why you chose me." He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "I promise." As she walked home that evening, she felt both fear and anticipation. The story was no longer just about rent or kindness. It was about truths hidden in family letters, about dangers lurking in shadows, about the fragile beginning of something she dared not name yet. She squeezed Lily's hand and whispered, "We will face this together." Emma woke the next morning with Jackson's promise echoing in her mind. He had said she mattered to him. He had said he would tell her the whole truth. She moved through her routine in a haze, packing Lily's lunch, tying her daughter's hair, listening to the cheerful chatter that spilled from her little girl while her own thoughts spun endlessly. After Lily skipped off toward the schoolyard, Emma lingered, watching her until the last moment. Then she whispered to herself, "Whatever the truth is, I need to be ready at the diner." She moved through her shift like a ghost. Customers came and went, but she barely noticed. Mia leaned over the counter and whispered, "Girl, you are somewhere else again." Spilled. Emma sighed. He said, "I matter to." Mia grinned wide. "Well, he is right, you do." Emma frowned. "But what if I cannot handle what he is hiding?" Mia squeezed her hand. "Then you handle it together." That evening, Jackson called. He asked her to meet him at his mansion. Not for dinner, not for a gathering, but for a conversation. Emma hesitated, but agreed. She dressed simply and left Lily with Mia. When she arrived, the mansion seemed even larger and quiet. Dust. Jackson was waiting in the library, lined with shelves of old books and photographs. He gestured for her to sit. He began slowly telling her about his father, a man powerful and distant who had built part of the empire Jackson now ran. He told her how his father and Emma's father had once been close, like brothers in business and almost in family, until betrayal had torn them apart. The letters Emma had found were proof of the wound that had never healed. Jackson leaned forward, his eyes steady. "I believe our father's choices shaped both of our lives more than we ever knew." Emma listened, her hands trembling. She thought of her father long gone. She thought of the arguments she had overheard as a child. She thought of her mother crying late at night. She whispered, "So all of this, the rent, the notes, the dinners, it was because of guilt." Jackson shook his head. "No, it was because of recognition. When I read about you, when I learned your name, I felt the past echoing. But I also saw you for who you are now, strong, honest, brave. That is why I could not walk away." Emma felt her heart twist. She wanted to believe him, and part of her did, but fear still clung. What if she was just a symbol of his need to heal old wounds? What if he tired of her once the past was settled? She left the mansion that night, torn between hope and doubt. In the weeks that followed, the world pressed harder. The gossip magazines did not stop. Photographers lurked outside her building. People whispered at the diner. Mia defended her fiercely. But Emma felt the walls closing, and Jackson increased security and promised her protection, but she could see the toll it was taking on him too. Meetings dragged him down, his shoulders heavy, his eyes darker than before. One night, after walking her home, he confessed, "I sometimes wonder if all my success is worth the cost." Emma touched his arm softly. "Maybe success means nothing unless you share it." Meanwhile, Lily thrived. She loved visiting the mansion gardens. She loved drawing pictures of her little family with Jackson included. She asked innocent questions. "Mama, is he going to be with us forever?" Emma would smile for the ache in her chest and answer, "I don't know, baby, but we will see." One weekend, Jackson invited Emma and Lily to a charity gala. He said it would be good for people to see them together. Emma panicked at the idea of standing in gowns among glittering strangers, but Mia helped her choose a dress, borrowed shoes, and encouragement. When the night came, Emma stepped into Grand Hall. Holding Lily's hand, Jackson stood beside them tall, and commanding cameras, flashed voices, whispered some with admiration, some with judgment during the evening. A board member approached, sneering, "You think you can turn charity into romance?" Jackson's jaw tightened. He answered calmly, "Emma is not charity. She is the bravest person I know." Emma felt her face burn, but also felt pride for once she was not invisible. But trouble was waiting outside the gala. A group of reporters surrounded them, shouting questions, twisting every glance, every smile into scandal. Security pushed them back, but not before one camera caught Lily's frightened face. The photo spread quickly, and the headlines the next day were "Cruel Single Mother Dragging Child into Billionaire's Chaos." Emma cried. When she saw it, she wanted to hide Lily forever. Jackson arrived with fury in his eyes. He swore no one would use Lily against him. The days that followed, Jackson revealed more of himself. He showed Emma letters from his mother, letters full of hope that he would grow into a man of kindness, not just wealth. He told Emma he feared he had failed her until he met Emma, and Lily, he said quietly, "You reminded me of the man my mother wanted me to be." Emma felt her heart soften. She whispered, "Maybe we both reminded each other." But the storm still brewed. Gerald Thornton, the rival executive who had mocked him before, began spreading rumors within the company. He hinted Emma was manipulating Jackson. He suggested the board should question Jackson's judgment. Jackson ignored it, but Emma could see the battle building. One night, Jackson took Emma and Lily back to the cabin in the woods. They sat by the fire, roasting marshmallows, Lily giggling with sticky fingers. For a moment, it felt like family, real and whole. When Lily fell asleep on the couch, Jackson looked at Emma. With eyes full of unspoken words, he whispered, "I do not know what the future will hold, but I know I want you." And Emma felt tears rise. She whispered, "I want the same." That night, under the stars, Emma realized her life had shifted completely. She was no longer just a single mother fighting to survive. She was part of a story larger than herself, a story that carried pain and history, but also love and possibility. The morning after their return from the cabin, Emma woke to find Lily still asleep, curled under a blanket. Jackson was already outside by the lake, staring across the water, lost in thought. She walked out quietly beside him and asked what he was thinking. He said softly, "I spent years believing money was everything and power was safety. But when I look at you and Lily, I realize the only safety that matters is family." Emma felt her chest tighten with emotion. She whispered, "Then do not let fear take that from you." When they drove back into the city, the world was waiting again. Headlines spun stories. People speculated. Neighbors whispered. But Emma no longer felt crushed by it. She had heard the truth from Jackson's own mouth, and she had seen the kindness in his actions. She knew the storm was far from over, especially with Gerald and others plotting in the background, but she also knew she was no longer standing alone. That night she tucked Lily into bed and wrote in her notebook, "The past shaped us, but it will not break us. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." Emma could feel the tension in the air as the weeks passed. The quiet support she felt from Jackson was strong, but the pressure from outside was growing louder. The board of his company was restless, the media was ruthless, and Gerald Thornton was moving like a shadow, whispering doubts and stirring trouble. She went through her days serving coffee at the diner, walking Lily to school, folding laundry at night. But under every simple task was a way to something larger. She was part of a story that was spinning out of her control. Jackson visited often, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes outside her apartment building, always calm, always steady. But Emma could see the storm behind his eyes. One evening after Lily had gone to bed, he admitted to Emma that Gerald was pushing for a vote of no confidence. "Try and take control of the company," he said. "If he succeeds, everything my mother built will be lost." Emma asked quietly, "What can I do?" He looked at her for a long moment, then whispered, "You already do more than you know. You remind me why I fight." The following week, the whispers turned into shouts. The Gossip magazine released another article, this time with claims that Emma had been promised luxury apartments and gifts. She slammed the paper onto her kitchen table, shaking with rage. None of it was true. Jackson arrived minutes later, furious, his lawyers already drafting responses, but Emma could see the toll on him. This was no longer just business. It was personal. Gerald was using her as a weapon to wound. And Mia tried to keep Emma calm. "You cannot control what people say." She reminded her, "Only what you believe." Emma nodded, but inside her heart ached. She worried for Lily. She worried for Jackson. She worried that her presence had become more harm than help. Then came the invitation. Gerald himself requested a private meeting with her. The message was clear: meet Me or watch everything collapse. Emma showed it to Jackson, who frowned darkly. He said, "You do not owe him anything." But Emma whispered, "Maybe I need to hear what he wants against his wishes." She agreed the meeting took place in a quiet restaurant. Gerald arrived in a tailored suit, his smile sharp, his words were smooth. He told Emma that Jackson was reckless, that his obsession with her was clouding his judgment. He said, "If you care about your daughter, walk away, leave. Him, to me, I can offer you money." "Security, freedom." Emma stared at him, disgusted. She said quietly, "I do not want your money. I want the truth." He laughed. "The truth is Jackson cannot protect you. The board will turn against him, and when he falls, he will fall too." Emma stood. Without finishing her drink, she walked out, without another word. When she told Jackson what happened, he was both angry and proud. Angry that Gerald had dared approach her, proud that she had refused. Jackson said, "He underestimates you. He thinks you are just a pawn, but you are stronger than he will ever understand." Still, the danger grew. The day of the board vote drew closer. Emma could feel the tension ripple through the city. Newspapers, speculated investors, whispered people around her building stared. When she passed, she held Lily's hand tighter than ever, whispering to herself, "We will survive." On the morning of the vote, Jackson asked Emma to attend with him. She hesitated, afraid of the stares, but he insisted. "I want them to see the woman who gave me strength." They walked together into the tall glass tower. Cameras flashed. Security guided them through the lobby. Inside, the boardroom, men and women in suits waited. Gerald sat at the far end, smiling like a wolf. The meeting was brutal. Gerald laid out accusations about Jackson's leadership, about a so-called scandal with Emma, about risks to the company. He pushed for Jackson to step down. The board murmured, uncertain. Then Jackson stood. He spoke not of numbers or charts, but of truth. He said, "Yes, I helped Emma Walsh. Yes, I chose to stand by her, and if that is seen as weakness, then I will accept it. But I believe strength is not in hiding behind walls. It is in standing with those who remind you of who you are." Emma sat frozen, her heart pounding. As he continued, he told the board about his mother, about the values she had given him, about how success without compassion was failure. He ended with simple words, "I will not apologize for being human." The room fell silent. Gerald sneered, thinking he had won, but slowly won. By one, board members shook their heads. They rejected his motion. His attempt to overthrow Jackson failed. The vote was lost. Gerald's smile cracked. After the meeting, Gerald stormed out, his face twisted with rage. Emma breathed out for the first time in hours. Jackson turned to her, his eyes soft, and whispered, "Thank you. Without you, I would not have had the courage." That night back at her apartment, Emma tucked Lily into bed and finally allowed herself to cry, not from fear, but from release. She whispered to her daughter, "We are safe for now," but deep down she knew Gerald was not finished. Men like him never walked away quietly, and the story was not done. That night, Emma sat by the window with her notebook open, the city glowing outside. She wrote about the meeting, about the way Jackson had stood in front of powerful men and chosen honesty instead of fear. She wrote about the way her heart had raced when the board sided with him, and about the quiet pride she felt knowing she had been part of his strength. She closed the notebook and whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." Across the city, Gerald sat alone in his office, staring at the skyline, his face dark with anger. He had lost a vote, but not the war. He whispered to himself, she will regret ever stepping into his life. His reflection in the glass looked back like a stranger. He knew the next move had to be ruthless. Emma had no idea what storm was still coming. She only knew that for the first time in years, she felt less alone. She kissed Lily goodnight and let herself dream of tomorrow where fear did not control her. As she drifted to sleep, she thought of Jackson's promise and believed that maybe for the first time Emma woke with a strange sense of calm, as if her body knew that something important was waiting. The vote was behind them, but the shadow of Gerald still lingered. She prepared Lily's breakfast, braided her daughter's hair, and walked her to school. The streets buzzed with their usual chaos, but Emma felt the tension in every glance, every whisper around her. She knew people still talked, but she also knew she could no longer let their words define her. Later that day, Jackson called and asked her to meet him at the park. It was the same place where he had once told her she mattered. She found him sitting on a bench, looking tired but strong. He said quietly, "Gerald is not finished. He has been moving money to outside accounts. He has tried to build power in secret." Emma felt her stomach drop. She whispered, "What does that mean?" Jackson replied, "It means he will come at us from another angle, but I will not let him succeed." That evening, Emma returned home to find another envelope taped to her door. Her hands shook as she opened. Inside was a single line, "Walk away or watch him fall." She felt cold fear rush through her. She tucked Lily into bed that night with a smile, but her mind raced long after the apartment. When quiet the next morning, she gave the note to Jackson. He read it silently, his jaw tightening. He said, "We are going to end this once and for all. I will Not let him use you as a weapon any longer. Emma looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she felt not just gratitude, but partnership. She said, then we faced him together. The confrontation came sooner than either expected. Jackson called an emergency meeting of the board, presenting evidence gathered by Victoria and his legal team documents, bank transfers, and testimony that linked Gerald to fraud and betrayal. The room buzzed with. Shocked, Gerald tried to deny it, his words desperate and sharp, but the truth was undeniable. The board voted unanimously to remove him. Security escorted him out, his eyes burning with hatred as they locked on Emma. One last time she shivered, but also felt relief afterward. The building seemed lighter. Jackson walked Emma out into the sunlight. The city was still loud, still restless, but something had shifted. He turned to her and said, the storm is over for now. She nodded, but whispered, and what about us? Jackson took a deep breath and answered, I did not help you out of guilt. I did not stand with you out of obligation. I did it because somewhere along the way you and Lily became my family. Emma felt tears blur her eyes. She whispered, and you became ours too. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe it. She reached for his hand, and he took it firmly. That night in their apartment, Emma wrote her final words in the notebook. The diary that had once been filled with fear was now filled with hope. She wrote, I was once a single mother fighting alone against the world, and a stranger paid my rent, and everything changed. He was not just a billionaire. He was a man searching for the same thing. I was a place to belong. Together we found it. She closed the notebook, kissed Lily goodnight, and let herself breathe deeply. For the first time in years, outside, the city lights flickered endlessly, but inside their small home, Emma felt safe. She whispered to her daughter, we are not alone anymore. And in the quiet of that moment, a story that began with an envelope on her door came to rest, not as a fairy tale, not as a scandal, but as a truth, a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of kindness can open a door to family, to love, and to a future no one thought possible.